platforming, bit of combat, bit of puzzling, bit of everything. It has a really cool world design with like these floating islands. And as the story goes, we are summoned by our robot friend Jeeves here in order to repair the floating islands after they've gone into disarray. Of course, we're going to do as little of that as possible. Say hello to the goat. Alright, so before I get too much into this, I'm immediately going to do something called a collision boost. There are some objects in the game where when you first walk over them, they give you a slight boost upwards, but then if you stand on them longer, you'll sink back down. If we jump during that like small boost upwards, we get some extra jump height, which lets us climb onto things quicker than possible. Or like climb onto things that we shouldn't. This one's a particularly tricky collision boost off a root. And, okay, the reason why we need to get up here is because we're going to skip part of the cutscene at the start of the game, assuming I can get up here. There we go. Alright, I need to focus a bit for this. There we go, perfect. Alright, so, fun fact, the name of this route, I should say, or this category, used to be no clip, because this is one of those games where at low frame rates, the collision just doesn't work for a lot of things, and you can clip through, like, walls and bushes that you can't usually. And in the interest of having, like, a category that's even for people with different hardware specs, that's sort of why the category exists instead of just a regular any percent, which still exists but not really anybody runs it. Now, we did eventually find that there are other ways to clip through objects. What I did there is when Hob walks off a ledge but turns around before they actually walk off the ledge, there is a little stumble animation Hob does. And if we do that adjacent to a wall that is perpendicular from the ledge we're, like, walking off, then we can clip through that wall. Now, normally that whole cutscene starts with Hob viewing an animal, and then Hob's arm gets infected, and Jeeves has to replace it with a robot arm. But by clipping into the loading zone there, we're able to skip that first half of the cutscene and go straight to the part inside the building. It's really wacky. Alright. Okay. Thanks for the good luck. Alright. Yes, got the scoop. There's a ton of tiny optimizations and time saves in this game. One right there is picking up the sword from that, like, swordsman quicker than usual by rolling and then pressing X. It's like normally Hob looks at his hand after Jeeves talks to him, but we can pick up the sword at the same time as he looks at his hand. There's going to be another one here I'm going to try to do, but it's a little tricky. I got it, cool. That's the sword drop hop. It skips the first animation of Hob dropping the sword fragment. Alright, so now that we have the sword, also it's a teleporting sword, don't tell anybody. Now that we have the sword, we can do some fun stuff. So when you attack in this game, Hob moves a little bit forward. And if you roll during that little bit forward, you do what's called a roll cancel, which gives you a bit of an extra speed boost. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that, but what's also important is if you do that facing a ledge, and then you jump when you reach the ledge, you do a long jump. And this is actually one of the hardest tricks in the game. There we go, cool. So, long jumps and roll cancels, which I did there across the ground, are two sort of bread and butter movement techs. that one in particular is called the Bushthwacker. Shoutouts to Half Coordinated for coming up with the name. Because that one specifically, we long jump onto a bush and then jump off the bush. But so most of the tricks in this game are going to be some variations on those. I'm mashing attack right now. Let's see if I get it. Yes, cool. That was found very recently, is that you can just mash attack during that cutscene, and it normally Hob would like stick his hand in there and it does this glowy thing, but we can move quicker after the cutscene by just kind of facing away from it. Also, quick volume warning, this game volume settings are not great, so okay, there's some things that just don't seem to abide by this game's like volume slider in the game, such as that door. Alright. Yeah, you can just jump across there. Normally... Ooh. Oops. Okay, normally you have to charge up the punch ability, which we just got, and break through some breakable walls. But there is no, like, invisible edges or invisible walls or anything up top here. So, as long as I'm careful about how I jump, I'm able to just jump across. Ooh. It's a little tricky, though. Let's hope that I get it this time. It's kind of awkward because there is like a... It's like a blind jump. Whoops. Nope. Okay. I'm going to do something that isn't technically, or not isn't technically, but like is kind of iffy on whether or not it fits any % no FPS abuse. Just for the sake of time, it's much safer than what I'm doing. I don't think this would make it a legal run on the leaderboard, but it's just for keeping things going. Okay, yeah. So, some people have found it more difficult to actually go through that window on higher frame rates. But, yeah, like I said, I just didn't want to risk dying again. Alright, so now I need to go back to main menu and continue. This is because we are going to talk to Jeeves here. But after we talk to Jeeves, we need to get a teleport, like, fast travel point. And if you go too fast through the start of this game, then you won't be able to actually trigger that fast travel point when you come across it, which is very annoying. However, if you go to the main menu and continue, it's fine. So we do that there because there's not really a big time difference. That's that punch breaking the wall I mentioned. So there, I went through the, like, zone that triggers that fast travel point. And now we're going to Electric to get our next main upgrade. Have to do this jump again. And then a long jump. Okay, cool. And now we're over in East Electric before you're supposed to. Hi, Rogue. Rogue is an NPC that appears a few times throughout the game. Normally, you see her during a cutscene there, but she's already loaded. So, since we don't see that cutscene, we get to just say hi to her. More magnet hands. Alright. just have to press this button and do another small collision boost on top of the button. And now we can do Warp Cave. So there's fall damage in this game if you fall from too high of a height, which you may have noticed in Punch Cave earlier. But we can cancel that fall damage. The specific explanation is that you're doing a grounded slash in midair and then punching right before you hit the ground. There's a few ways to actually like enter that state where that's possible. One of which there was the walking slash off a ledge. Alright. So now we have warp, which lets us do this. And it also lets us activate these warp pads down here. But we're not going to use that, and we're going to go ahead and leave electric and take that fast travel point. Because we need to hurry up and open more of the map. So, normally in the game, you would turn on the power, which is like this pretty long side quest, and all it does is open a gate up here. But of course, we have a way to skip around that, thanks to a combination of different things. There we go. Cool. So yeah, that gate right there to my left is the only thing we needed that for. Technically, it does also power some machines here, but again, we don't need them. Ooh. Okay. Okay. There we go. Okay, there we go. Got that ladder. Now for a somewhat tricky long jump. Sweet, got that. Climb up this ladder to here. Okay. I'll do the other strat then. So, the goal of that trick is once I climb up that ladder and I climb onto that ledge to the side of it, there's technically another ledge that you can just barely grab onto just a little higher up. But if you miss it, then it's sometimes you'll end up like falling off the side. You can also just long jump down below the ladder and like pull this wall out, which is a bit slower, but it's a bit safer as well. Okay. So the last main sort of movement tech is the platform boost jump, or PBJ. And I will be pressing jump and attack at the same time. Luckily, this game lets you rebind pretty much everything pretty extensively, so I have these bound to the same button. Alright, the reason it's called platform boost jump is because if you're on a moving platform when you do it, then some of the momentum of the moving platform carries over to your jump, which, so if you're on a vertical platform, it gives you a bit of a boost, but it gives you an even greater boost if you're on a horizontally moving platform, which will happen later. Okay. And so with that switch pulled, we can now open Dome. There's another volume warning coming up for something that doesn't quite play well with the game's volume sliders. You can clip through there pretty easily without without any sort of frame rate magic going on. Okay. So, factory here is where we'll get our first keystone, which we need to unlock more parts of the world. Sort of raise the floating world that has fallen to the ground. And Factory is split up into 4 main sections. The first one is pretty slow. However, one thing that I will be doing after I push these batteries in is I'll do another of those PBJ jumps. But it has a bonus even if you're not on a moving platform, which is just that it has a tiny bit more distance than a regular jump. The reason why I can't do a long jump is because technically... Whoop, well, okay, cool, never mind. Technically, you can't long jump over every ledge. You can only do them over ledges you can fall off, I believe. Some ledges, when you try to long jump off them, you'll just kind of grab back onto the ledge and climb back up. But the PBJ can be done on those types of ledges as long as we can still, you know, make it all the way across. These are those warp pads. Factory 2, you don't have to do anything special there. You just walk onto that concrete part and then run off, and it doesn't deal any fall damage. There's a billion ways to skip that pipe. That's just the method I prefer. I don't think it's technically the fastest. Alright, cool. That jump's also kind of weird. But it is sort of something I really love about this game, is how oftentimes there are multiple approaches to the same problem that you can kind of figure out which way works for you. Alright. So, there's not a whole lot else going on in Factory 2. I would like to be able to catch this moving platform just slightly. Okay, I didn't. But I didn't die, which is important. So, a bit about the history of this run. I think the last time it was in... Well, actually, never mind what I was going to say. But, so the run used to get an upgrade called Sword Thrust. And, so to get upgrades, you need these green gems that you get either from killing enemies or from opening these, like, gem shrines. And Sword Thrust gave slightly better grounded movement and a easier to perform long jump method that's also slightly longer. However, you had to go out of your way to get the gems required compared to the more direct route. And so once we started using our current long jump method, which is to press attack while walking and while your sword is sheathed, once we started getting used to that, we found that most long jumps that we thought required thrust could still be done with this walking slash method. One of the important ones that is a lot harder to do is just ahead a little bit. And so we do a slightly different strat for the first cycle here. I need to pay a little bit of attention here. Okay, cool. So that's one of the PBJs from a horizontal platform that got me a lot of horizontal distance. Or at least a rotating platform. And then I can do another one up here to just speed up this otherwise auto-scroller. There is one other relevant long jump in the game that isn't possible without thrust, that like the old thrust route would get. However, it's not for a little bit, but I will point it out when we get there, because it has its own interesting history. Okay. So, coming up here, technically I could do a fall damage cancel to reach the bottom, but I'm not quite comfortable with it yet, so I'm going to do the leap of faith. Grabbing onto ladders negates your fall damage. However, that's the only ladder we actually grab onto. Right, if I hadn't gone through there, I would have had to book it through a lot of, like, moving platforms. Technically, it's still possible to first cycle doing that, where you, like, go around, but it is a very tight window. Otherwise, you have to wait for another moving platform to spawn once you get across, so you can end up losing a lot of time. Say hi to the wild boars. I think most of the animals in this game that aren't enemies, you can pet, and it'll actually give you gems for doing so. It's kind of a fun little feature. Or at least there's like a location of those enemies where one of them is pettable. Alright, so we inserted our first keystone. And now we're going to open the forest. Yes, we still need to route pet percent, where you pet every animal. It is an important category willing to be made. Here you can also see the sprites for the first time. These sort of nature woodland sprites. Denizens of the forest. Whoops. Whoops. Sprites are the best. Correct. Not again. Okay. So after one more long jump up here, we're coming to boss fight. Not just any boss fight, it's the only boss fight we have to do. Though technically we don't have to do it. There is a skip, it's just slower than actually fighting it. Ooh. Okay, I'll do the skip. Yeah, the bosses will instant kill you if you only have 3 health like we do. They take 7 hits of the normal sword to actually beat. And I am particularly bad at them. There's a lot of other enemies nearby that can hurt the boss, and they can actually attack each other, but putting them near each other is not a great idea, just because it's a lot harder to dodge. So instead I'll do the backup strat. Just want to go about there, and there. Cool. And then from here, so like the back of the little building there doesn't have collision, doesn't have like a back face, so we can just kind of run backwards into loading zone. Cool. There I did a warp and then buffer to jump by holding jump out of the warp, and that gave me a huge boost of speed. There's another PBJ there. Technically, you should be able to do a regular PBJ off that first spinning platform, but I think the warp just looks cooler. Whoops. Okay. And now we can clear our first corruption and get some gems, apparently. So there are 7 of these in the game, and you have to do this one first. You can technically reach 3 of them, I think, at least 2 of them, and clear them before this one, just through, like, sequence breaks. But due to the way the game handles, like, progression tracking, if you don't do this one first, then you won't be able to go to the final boss. For a while we didn't know why this was, and it's pretty much just the game uses an invisible hidden quest counter. We don't have a donation incentive to turn on water. I haven't routed that out yet. So, this is Sprite Mom. She is the head sprite, the guardian of the forest. She gives us our next keystone, and she kind of hints at that tower being the source of the plague corrupting the land. And now that we've freed her, we can start clearing out all the other corruption and keep moving on. Gotta do a long jump here. Technically you don't have to, but it's fun. This part's a little tricky. Cool, got it. It's a surprisingly tight jump there. And if you fail it, you start, or you respawn all the way back at Sprite Mom. I'm going to grab a checkpoint, but I'm gonna try something a little risky first, just because it's cool if I can do it. Okay, I'll do the old strat. There's a way you can climb over that wall just by kind of running into it at a specific angle. But the angle's fairly precise. So instead, I'm going to do a long jump and hug the left wall. Because if you don't hug the left wall, you get into a cutscene. Both tricks skip that cutscene. The one that climbs that electric fence is just a little faster. Alright, and we're already at our second corruption here for electric this time. And we can do these in any order now that we've cleared Sprite Mom. Yes, I will try Bushwhacker too. So, ooh, almost clipped through the floor there. Whoop, okay, I need to get a checkpoint over here just for safety. Oh, that was weird. So, normally we do walking / long jumps where you have your sword sheathed and then you walk and attack to unsheath it. But there is another method that gives roughly the same distance, which is a punch long jump. It's slower because you have to charge up the punch, but the advantage is that you can line up pretty precisely for some specific tricks that way. So, like, that jump is a lot harder to do with the walking / because you can't line it up unless you do, like, the punch. But, like, it's sort of like other games where they'll line up parts of a character's body with the surroundings to get like a pixel perfect layout. It's sort of a similar concept to that. Okay, so this is where the other long jump that normally requires thrust is. There's a pillar to the right of me that you can only long jump to if you have thrust. And it was called Pillar Pounce. And it was very annoying because it wasn't really consistent. However, recently, I found another way to do this without thrust that is still very annoying. I'm going to try it a few times because it's cool if I can pull it off. Ooh, that was very close. The objective is to... Okay, I didn't get it. I'm not going to try it then. Unfortunately, I could not get the Bushwhacker 2, but I want to keep this moving. So that's the sequel to Bushwhacker. It's twice as hard and twice as annoying. You jump on a bush and then you jump onto a teleporter. But if you miss, then you have a chance of going into the teleporter like I just did. So instead we're just going to say goodbye to Jeeves and kind of ditch him. Go off into the background. Then we do a long jump, and there is a ladder we're going to climb that meets up to where that other trick would have taken us. Just a tad slower. Alright. We're almost to the next corruption. Yeah, it's very hard. I might be the only one who's done it so far, at least in runs. The 2 bush-related tricks. All right. There's cemetery corruption, number 3. And we're going to keep moving. That might not be good. I think I have to get hit by a dog now. We'll see. I'll explain what I mean later. First, another... Okay. I messed up the fall damage cancel, but there's a checkpoint down here anyways, so it doesn't matter. And in here, we're going to get our last upgrade. Just have to make one long jump. Cool. Don't want to trigger the checkpoint over there. So this is the grapple upgrade. It's sort of a hook shot, grapple beam sort of thing, where there are these grapple points that you can pull yourself to. And I'm not really going to be using it yet, but it is the basis for some of the most broken tricks in the game. But since we didn't trigger that checkpoint, we can just respawn and go back to the entrance of the dungeon. This, in my opinion, is the hardest trick in the game. A very simple jump. But it's kind of awkward. It's also the only way out of this pit. There we go. Perfect. Cool. Yeah, you can also fall off on the second, like, block you have there. I don't remember if I needed to get hit by a dog yet. Okay, cool. So, whoop, I almost died. So, in this game, whenever you hit respawn from the menu, the animation that plays is based off whatever the last source of damage you took was. And if that source of damage were to kill you, what animation would have played? This is important because I'm going to do a trick up here called a momentum respawn, where I release a punch and then respawn during the punch. Ooh, I missed it. That's rough. Okay, too bad. So normally I would release the punch, then respawn during it, so that I would die going into the loading zone for the trigger, or for the cutscene. And then that would let me be active during the cutscene when I respawn, which would let me pick up this keystone much earlier. But instead, I guess you get to see more of Rogue, who otherwise is kind of absent for most of this. I apologize that I couldn't show off it for this run. Okay. This is the last keystone we get. So once we place this, the entire world will be open. And technically from there, we pretty much can do the rest of the objectives in any order. Just have to dodge those. The place we open is called Water or Reservoir. I think the game's files call it Reservoir. And you'll see why it's called that in just a moment. Oof. That is the most strong enemy in the game. As far as the just random enemies go, it's the one that most people have died to a lot, except for the goats. I was able to dodge the exploding goats earlier. But we'll see how that holds up in a bit. Alright. So normally in this game, along with clearing out all the corruption, there's this whole side quest of restoring the land. So not only would you raise the islands, but you would also turn on the water and then have the water flow through the rivers throughout the land. And then also there's, of course, turning on the power. But we don't need to turn on the water. I will get this checkpoint first. But we do need the water that's there. Alright. I am looking for a buddy that should be around here somewhere. Actually, it might be when I clear corruption, so I'll come back. So, time for grapple storage. So, if you punch during the startup or end of a grapple, you will store the location of that grapple point as if you were still facing it. And then also you can act out of any further grapples with another punch. When you're grappling, you go through walls, which lets us just move around the place. Now, I'm going into a dungeon. You might be wondering what happens to the grapple point there. Well, it still saves the location of the grapple point. So right now that beam is pointing to where the coordinates would be on the overworld. And we can still grapple to it, which is great because that lets us skip through a lot of walls. The one problem with this is if we take too long, the game will literally crash. So I have to be kind of quick with this. Okay, that's fine. I think I still have enough time despite that death. Once you leave the dungeon, the timer resets. So if I die again, I would have to leave back on that elevator. And then, okay, I missed again, which is unfortunate. I think I'm still good. It's kind of tricky to say, though. I'll just have to go super fast. Reset, yeah, I should really reset, actually. So it's going to be a tad slower, but this is just so that it doesn't crash. Slight apologies. Okay. So yeah, luckily, if we end up taking too long at the start, we still have this available to us. Then we just go back down. I think it's like a 4-minute timer. It might be shorter than that. We definitely have enough time to make one mistake at the start and still be fine. But yeah, I'd really rather not let the marathon run crash. We would just reload it back in here, and it's pretty salvageable still. It would just take a while. Cool. Punch here. Go up to this platform, jump down to this pipe, jump, grapple, punch. Climb up here. Here we have our next sprite. Sweet, okay. That is how it looks in motion. So, this is another reason why we switched from any % no clip, which was the old version of the category, to any % no FPS abuse. Is because grapple storage lets you clip through walls like nobody's business. There's one more caveat to grapple. Similarly to how there is a timer when we go into a dungeon that ticks down in the background before it crashes. If we're on the overworld and we get too far away from a grapple point, then the game will crash. Luckily, the next corruption that we need to clear is within range of this grapple point. So we can just get the same grapple storage. I do need to look for... Oh shoot, it's not here. Okay. I promised I would hug one of the sprites. And there's supposed to be one you can hug there, but I really don't see it. Okay, just have to dodge some goats. I'll let that one explode. These enemies are probably the most lethal in the game. Everybody dies to them sometimes. Wait, did I? Okay, I did. Cool. So yeah, we can use grapple to help us get up here. It takes a bit longer casually to get up to this point after we clear that sprite out. And then grapple storage also lets us just go over back to the teleporter over here. Okay, the game crashed. I don't know why. However, all's well. I just have to restart the game. That wasn't the grapple storage one. Huh. Uh-oh. 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 Says it's still running. Okay, there it goes. Okay, hopefully I'm not too overestimate now. Okay, this isn't great. I think I might be able to salvage this by doing... Okay. Whoop. So I can still make it back to where I need to be, luckily. I was really worried. This is why, though, my PB is like 46 something, I want to say. But for marathons, I always have to give it a slightly higher estimate for the worst case scenario. Alright, so now we're teleporting back to the forge here to get the intro corruption. And I am going to get the checkpoint and then do the safest strat to get up here, aka the intended strat. There's a slightly quicker one, but it can soft lock the game and force a restart, so I'm just gonna avoid that. And I died to a goat. It had to happen once. 45-29, yeah. Alright. There we go, much better. This sprite, you can technically roll cancel across some of these places, but just for safety's sake, I'm taking it steady. Luckily, even if the goats track you like that, you can hide behind the corruption pod there and just avoid getting hit. Normally, I would just press start and respawn, but that respawn animation would be pretty slow. So just to try and get a better one, I'm gonna fall off the edge there. So the old run used to go down from Pipe's corruption to get to the area where the dome was, to where I entered factory, which is where the next corruption is. However, that was before we had that new grapple strat for the Pipes corruption. So now we do intro first, intro corruption, go over here and do this one second out of the final two corruption. And then this is a needlessly tricky warp. Oh wow, I meteored. Okay, so that's definitely not what the is supposed to happen there. There's a lot of ways you can miss that warp and just fall into the water below. And then there's a backup strat. But that's what we call a meteor, or at least what I call a meteor. Cool, I got the regular strat the second time though. Where sometimes you'll warp across a ledge and it'll instead shoot you down vertically to the floor below and then kill you from fall damage. Yeah, warp is a really awkward mechanic at times. But there, what I did was I warped at the ledge, and then that gave me enough it gave me enough horizontal distance to climb onto the ledge on the other side. That is one of those places where we can't long jump because we would just grab back onto the ledge we're trying to jump from, which ends up being a little tricky, and we have to find other methods. Okay, so before we can go back to Sprite Mom, now that we have all the corruption cleared, we need to get a Colossus core. Cool, I did that. That fall damage cancel is surprisingly difficult. You don't have a lot of room there. So this is like the other sort of main quest line. To actually reach the tower that the corruption came from, we need 3 Colossus cores. And Sprite Mom gives us 1 for completing all the corruption. And then the other 2 are just found in the map. That was Wetlands Colossus. Now I'm going to, go to Sprite Mom, avoid the bugs. Since I didn't kill the boss fight, the enemies are still there. If I would have fought the boss and killed it, then the enemies would have been gone. But alright. That's our second core. We're going to get a lot of pings on the map since we haven't looked at the map in a while. Okay. Going to get a checkpoint because this trick is kind of awkward. This is the forest walk-off. It's called that because you walk off. There's a chance that you die, but most of the time you don't die. I'm still trying to find a more consistent way of doing this. I don't think we've found one yet. Okay. That time I got it. We want to go down those trees. I'm not going to roll cancel here because I need that blue energy bar in the top left to be full. And it doesn't do that when you're rolling around. Yeah, there's a chance you die, but not always. It's a slight chance. We actually, so you need to grapple up to get this this core, and we used to keep dying because we would grapple and then fall off immediately, and we didn't know why. And then it turned out it was literally because we didn't have enough of that energy. All right, did a fall damage cancel there for a tiny time save. Yeah, there are a lot of death, like, kill planes there as well. Yeah, I'm doing, like, a lot of broken stuff, but I think this game is pretty beautiful casually. Especially, like, if you have lighting settings on. I don't, because it makes some of the tricks a little harder for me to see. Especially in, like, indoor places like the factory. But I do enjoy it as, like, a casual adventure game as well. Alright, so we've inserted all of the Colossus cores, so it can now turn on. Say hi to Jeeves. He teleports in. Yeah, we have Hob moments, which is our term for whenever Hob does something funny. I guess I'll try this. I actually haven't been able to do this yet. It's very weird. Okay, I think I died. That's fine. That didn't really miss a lot of time. There's a new strat where you climb on the Colossus while it's climbing up, and then that lets you get up here early, which lets you trigger a cutscene early, which lets you climb on its arm early. but that's not important. What's important is climbing up this tower, which there is also a recent tiny time save that we found for this as well. I'm gonna respawn there because I got the glitchy camera. Yeah, I don't remember if we found the reason why, but sometimes the camera will stay framed on the Colossus instead of following Hob up the arm. And technically that lets you get up the tower faster, but it's also extremely hard to see, and I haven't really practiced with it yet. So for me, it's safer to just respawn so I can do this. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and start talking about the final cutscene skip of the game, which is luckily easier to do than the one I missed earlier. So I'm going to get grapple storage at the top of this tower right after I do this that I actually need to like pay attention to. Okay. I have to go in this corner and then walk out. There we go. Normally you have to pull another of those cranes and rotate the tower again. Alright, so I'm getting grapple storage. Then I just need to move around here. Now I'm going to jump and grapple through the wall here. And I'm going to die from doing so. This triggers the final cutscene. Next, I am going to go in and punch Rogue. This is because when you punch NPCs in cutscenes, they do like the next part of the cutscene. There we go. Alright, now I need to pay attention to the alien queen here, because I need to respawn at a specific time. Normally, she will lock Hob in place with like this red sort of glowy hand maneuver. Now, you shouldn't be stupid. Uh-oh. Cool. So, yeah, we can act during the start of that cutscene because I died going into the cutscene trigger. Then, since I respawned before she did the red glowy Magneto hands, that let me act during this part. Whoops, I didn't want to hit Rogue. Now I just need to jump and punch the queen. And time is going to be when the screen turns black. Time. Alright, so that was Hob. A few stumbles here and there, but that's just what we've come to love about the game. We call it Hob moments. Really cool game, really great community. We do races every Saturday, give or take. Hope you enjoy the rest of the marathon and hope you donate towards the good cause, I guess? Yes, GG.